Hello everyone and welcome to the Pup Mommy. I'm going to be talking about a topic today that it may or may not sit well with some people, and that topic is breeders. Now, if you want to adopt a dog, there are three paths you can go down. One is that breeder path, the second is a rescue, and the third is a shelter. When you adopt a dog, it's not one size fits all. And depending on what you are looking for and what you want to settle for and how much money you want to spend, there is no right path, no wrong path. It is just totally up to you. And what's right for some people may not be right for other people. But let's get started in this two-part series. In this series, in part number one, which what you're watching now, I'm going to be talking about three different types: the experienced, reputable, the hobby, and the specialty. In part number two, I will be talking about commercial, backyard, and puppy mills. So let's get started if you want to go down that breeder path. Now, I will leave a link to the matrix that I'm going to be referring to in this video. I will leave it in the description section so that you can check it out on your own when you have some time. The first type of breeder that I'm going to refer to is the highly experienced, reputable breeder. This is a breeder whom you will mostly see on television at the dog shows, the American Kennel Club, the Westminster Kennel Club dog show. These are people who have been breeding dogs for decades, and they are committed to longevity of the breed, and they are committed to the breed itself. These are people who have the dogs live inside the home with them. They maybe have one litter, at maybe two at the most per year. To them, what is paramount when breeding dogs is the health of the dog and the temperament of the dog. So they are very, very careful who they breed their dogs with and who they breed their dogs to. Now, the thing about these breeders also, what makes it sometimes a little difficult to adopt from them, is because they love their dogs so much and they care for their dogs and where their puppies go, that many times you will need a referral to one of these breeders, or you will need breed experience. So if you're someone who has a Yorkshire Terrier but you always really wanted a Great Dane, it may be a little difficult getting that dog perhaps from a Great Dane breeder of this type of reputation, because they like to have people who are familiar with the breed. Another thing to consider also is that because there is such a demand for these puppies, but yet there's not that many of the puppies and breeders out there, you may find yourself on a waiting list. And that waiting list could be 1 year, could be 2 years. There are even waiting lists of 3 years, which might not be bad if you're waiting for your child to grow up a little. You might say, okay, that's not too bad. I can wait 3 years. But for people who are used to instant gratification, that might not work. Now, where do you find these breeders? These breeders usually belong to associations called the Breeder Club. By that I mean, let's say the Boston Terrier Club of America, the German Shepherd Club of America. Every breed has a Club of America. So that's one good place to start. The other place that you can look at also is if you go to westminsterkennelclub.org and you look at some of the show statistics, most of the dogs who come from these breeders will have the kennel name and the breeder name associated with the dog. So that's another way of finding them. Keep in mind also that besides the waiting list, besides, contacting the breeder who may or may not get back to you, also keep in mind that these dogs are going to be expensive. And why? Well, simply because of their lineage. Many of these puppies have grand champion sires behind them, and so their pedigrees are a mile long. So these puppies are not going to be $1,000. All right, these puppies are probably can be $2,500, $3,500, $5,000 or more, depending on the breed and depending on the popularity of the breed. So that is something to keep in mind when you're looking at this particular breeder type. And one other thing I will say to you also, with this breeder type, they will stay with you throughout the lifetime of the dog. So that if something happens to you, very possible that the breeders, 99% possible, the breeders will take the dog back. Will they reimburse you for the dog? No, they won't. won't. But they will be there because they don't want the dog to end up in a rescue, a shelter, or God forbid, abandoned somewhere. So they will work with you to take the dog back. And if you encounter certain issues with your dog or problems or questions, you can always telephone them, email them. They will be there for you. So that's breeder type number 1. As you know, I can talk about this forever. And breeder type number 2 is what is called the hobby breeder. Now, the hobby breeder is very similar to breeder number 1 in that the hobby breeder also has the same philosophy, the same breeding philosophy. They love their dogs, they care for their dogs, very similar to number 1, as I said, but breeding is not their full-time income. They're full-time employed somewhere else. They breed as a hobby and for the love of the breed. You can also be comfortable in going to these people because, like the reputable breeder, they too have very good reputations. They keep the dogs inside their home. They care about who they sell their dogs to. Many of them you'll see will have pre-screening applications on their website. And from those pre-screening applications, they will decide whether or not they're going to get back to you. These dogs also, the breeder will stay with you throughout the lifetime of the dog. They are totally committed to their dog, but they don't necessarily, some of them may not have some of the really deep experience of someone who has been breeding and showing and handling for 40 years. But make no mistake, these people are very, very competent. They love their dogs. And if you happen to get a dog from them, you're going to be a very lucky person. So that is breeder type number 2, the hobby breeder. And in terms of expense and waiting list, yes, they may have a waiting list. And that waiting list may also be 1 year or 2 years. Because again, remember, they breed as a hobby, but they are not constantly producing dogs and puppies. This is going to be something that you're not going to find a puppy again for $1,000. With breeders who breed for the love of the dog, very few of them ever recoup their costs. Very few of them, because they love their dogs so much and because they want to take excellent care of them. So be prepared to pay several thousands of dollars for dogs that come from these hobby breeders. The third type of breeder that is out there, I call the specialty breeder. And this is a breeder who breeds for a specific type of purpose. It could be a breeder who breeds dogs for people with disabilities, for PTSD. Initially think of guide dogs for the blind or canine companions for independence. Think also of dogs who are bred for the military and our law enforcement, the working line dogs. And then there is also the specialty breeder who breeds for personal protection. And all of these breeders have, again, deep experience. Now, some people may have the dogs in the home with them. At the same time, there are other breeders who are going to have kennels on the property, but they are all highly experienced in the dog breeds that they handle. And they're also limited to certain breeds. So you're going to see some Labrador Retrievers. Yes, you're going to see German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, Giant Schnauzer, Rottweiler, Doberman Pinscher. One of the things that I will say is that, again, because they're specialty breeders, especially when you're dealing with law enforcement, search and rescue, military, whatever, those breeds are basically off limits to the average consumer. But one breeder that is on limits, off limits, on limits, is the personal protection breeder, because there are people out there who do breed dogs for that particular instance. They are dogs that are bred so that they can live beautifully, calmly, serenely, happily with your family, whether you have babies, whether you have children, whether you have elderly people with you, but they were also the type of dog that will give their life for you. Now, because of the amount of training that goes into these dogs, many of these dogs are not for everyone. Personal protection dogs can go anywhere from $25,000 all the way up to $120,000, sometimes even more. That's the price of a home, the price of a car for many, many people. That's why these dogs are not necessarily for everyone. Anyone who has one of these dogs, they know that they're worth their weight in gold. But again, they're not for everyone. All right, so that's the end of part 1 of this video series. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below and I'll get back to you. If you have any questions regarding where to go to find these breeders or breeders in general, or anything else that I've covered that I wasn't too clear on, because when I'm wound up I can really start talking. Just leave me, DM me. You can't DM me, all right? This isn't Twitter. You can contact me in through my information that I will leave in the description section. So that's it for part 1. And part 2, I'll be back momentarily. Thank you again for watching. Don't forget to click and subscribe. Bye for now.